What is both the best and worst case scenarios for Bitcoin as we do feel at the time between now and the end of Q1 of 2024? Really the time between now and the halving date, which is essentially kind of around the same time frame. So I just want to get right into this one, as I do think it will be of interest, especially to the people who like to catastrophize out there, both the upside and the downside. And in this case, this is the best catastrophizing that I can do that actually has data to back it up, and could be happening actually, or getting started, I should say, relatively soon here. Anyways, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Starting off right over here. Oh, I should probably say, don't forget to like and subscribe. Haven't said that in quite some time. Not doing well there. Not doing well indeed. Anyways, so yes, what are we looking at right here? We're looking at a very long-term chart of Bitcoin, the index on TradingView, which has the full history of Bitcoin, or at least the available history of Bitcoin, I should say, going all the way back to 2009, actually. And in this case, we can, of course, map out all prior halving dates. And there is a very interesting relationship between what price action does around that time, or actually really in the year before that time, up until the halving. So all of the green vertical bars represent halving dates of the past. The current one, or not the current one, but the one that we're going to see next in the future, actually slated for sometime around May. So actually, you might have to adjust the time frame of this, I guess maybe another month or actually, sorry, it's like the 1st of May. So yeah, still basically around the end of Q1. I know that there's another month in between there, but fair enough. Close enough in this case. Okay, so we've referenced this chart many times in the past, especially when calling the macro low on Bitcoin thus far. That was based off of both a timing and also just general positioning between, the long-term downtrend and in some key Fibonacci's, as well as the statistics as to what we expect for the days between the halving and the low to kind of exist. It's a long way of saying, typically around this time, about a little bit less than a year out. Anyways, what's new about this is I've adjusted a few things because my mind was going a little bit crazy in the early morning, and well, figured why not. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at a Fibonacci retracement from the ultimate high to the ultimate low of each and every cycle. And what I've done on these Fibonacci retracements is I've just removed everything except for what I deem is kind of necessary in this case. And we're going to be looking at 3 major fibs, basically. The 236, which is kind of a lesser spoken one, the 50% level, which is not really even a fib actually, and in the 618, and that's basically it. So what I've also done here that's different than before as well is I have actually ticked off fib levels based on log scale, and just found that there's something that I haven't noticed before. And so when we go through this first cycle right here, I think this will become very apparent very, very quick. And actually, let me just put on the 618 right here, just so that we can see where price action's positioning is towards that. Yeah, we can see on this first rally before the halving, again, the green vertical bar, price action did get a little bit above the 50% level, and closer to the 618. Yes, before that first major correction. You can see that in that same month, after hitting that high, it did come down and make a nice low right around the 236. In fact, pretty much just smack dab on it. And yes, I can confirm that the high was put in first before the low, but that's the major thing, is that first major pullback, and then Bitcoin was onwards and upwards from there, for the next couple of years, really. Then we get to the next cycle over here. Of course, similar things. That pre-halving cycle rally, Bitcoin rallies up just above the 50% level. In this case, not as close to the 618, but that's okay. And what do you know? After that, corrects, in this case 1 month after the halving, but corrects all the way down to the 236, very similar to the prior one as well. So okay, we have a little bit of a potential trend going on here. Then we get to the next cycle over here in 2019, 2018, and what do you know? Bitcoin breaks that long-term downtrend, rallies up for the pre-halving rally. That's not redundant enough. In this case, it rallies all the way basically to the 618. Again, between the 50% and the 618. And then plays out that major correction. In this case, it was you might call it a black swan in March of 2020, but it does tag that 236 and basically closes around it on the monthly here. And then what do you know? In this current iteration, we have seen Bitcoin get up just above the 50% retracement. That is the $43,000 or so level, which Bitcoin's almost $1,000 above right now, or is $1,000 above right now. And at some point, could we see an extension of this rally, maybe towards a 618, just shy of $50,000? possible. We have seen that in the past, certainly. Maybe that comes alongside an ETF announcement as well for a quick spike up there. Definitely possible. But ultimately, it would be uncharacteristic of Bitcoin compared to all past 3 cycles, which 3 times does make a trend, for Bitcoin not to come down and actually tag the 236, which is much lower. So this is actually the lowest target that I've ever really even considered for Bitcoin on the next major pullback. It does seem low to me, and it does seem like out of it would seem a little bit out of reach to me as well, just by looking at it. But that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. At the end of the day, the data is what the data is, and I'm sure at the past times probably didn't really, it probably felt very similar as well. Remember, these were all pretty significant corrections. When we go back to 2019, 2020, from that high to the next, to the 236, that's a 50% move. Like significant, very fucking significant. When we go to 2015, 2016 on the breakout right here, from the high to the, to the corrective low, that's a 40% move. Done over the course of about 2 months. And then of course this one over here, this one done kind of painlessly actually, just because it was all done in the same month, but that was another 50% correction right there. So we're talking about big numbers, like really, really big numbers. And, if Bitcoin were to obviously tag somewhere around the 618 and then come down to the 236, that would be a 40% correction, which would be, the second to lowest correction that we have seen, coming after the halving rally. So again, how does this all look? Well, we do have a fundamental, it is a fundamental event kind of on the horizon. It's looming. We have a looming event with the ETF likely approval, probably even this week. It sounds like even on Friday it was kind of like softly approved. But at the end of the day, who the fuck knows what that even means until it actually starts trading. Probably doesn't really matter all that much. Anyways, coming off of an event like that, it is quite common to rally, maybe even sometimes a little bit after it as well. A lot of people like to point towards the exact day that something lists that, the highs put in. That is what happened back here in 2018, 2019. Basically, the high was when CME futures did start trading. But for other events, it's not always cut and dry like that. A lot of the time, it can be a few days before, a few days after. It's very difficult actually to kind of guess in advance, and that's really what it is, a guess. I know that a lot of people on social media like to really say things with like very high conviction, which I wish I had the confidence level of some of these people, or especially of just commenters in general. Sometimes it's always really interesting. For the most part, everyone's pretty chill, but you run across some comments sometimes just like, the fuck is this guy smoking, like, for real? How do you get dressed in the morning is my real question. But yeah, anyways, more back on topic here. More back on topic, also some more good English. What I'm trying to say is that, look, Bitcoin could very easily put another spike on this rally, close to $50,000, maybe even a little bit above $50,000. It's definitely possible, especially on an event like an ETF getting listed. That is a big event. I don't care what anyone says. It is a big fucking event, whether you like it or not. But after that, would it be unordinary for it to not test somewhere around the 236? It would be unordinary. Now, people can say this time is different because ETF. Maybe, I don't know, maybe. But that is in the cards there. Anyways, I want to bring you to the next chart over here because this one kind of plays hand in hand with it. This is, again, the 2-day time frame volatility versus stochastic momentum signature. We are seeing that 2-day volatility is, back in that contraction phase. So we don't really have a signal here just yet. It's setting up. It's very likely going to fire off this week, probably hand in hand with an ETF deal as well, right? That's how these things typically work. And the more important part of this is that the direction of the stochastic oscillator has a very high correlation with the direction of that volatility expansion, which, on average gives moves somewhere between like 20 to 30%. And in this case right here, the 2-day time frame stochastic oscillator is actually going to be positioned to the upside, thus giving a higher probability of an upside expansion, assuming that Bitcoin can remain above the pivot at 43,700. 43,700 is about $400 below where price action currently trading right now, but That's not for tonight's closure. That's for tomorrow night's. And still, we really need to see like some obvious expansion over here of volatility, which we're not really just yet. We're not really going to get expansion on volatility as long as Bitcoin's below like 44,500 or above, especially in this case, like 42,000 on a closing basis. On a closing basis, that is for the 2-day time frame. But until then, I mean, the trend still does remain to the upside, and the trend typically is your friend. You know, we got higher highs and higher lows here as of right now. And if Bitcoin continues to remain above this pivot, then probabilities will naturally start to shift in favor of another extension, you know, maybe 20, maybe even 30% move to the upside, which from current price action, or from the current base, which is where this typically gets measured from, is when I've done the backtesting on this, you know, 20% up from there would put Bitcoin where? $50,000, a little bit above $50,000. 30% puts Bitcoin, you know, in the mid 50s, 55,000. So that would be rather significant. By the same token, the downside moves do have similar statistics with them. You know, shaving 20% off of current price action puts Bitcoin back down around, you know, mid 36, 36.5. 30% puts Bitcoin 31, you know, 29 region, at 35% pullback from current price action. So again, it is very interesting to me here to see the kind of confluence between these two things. You know, if we go back over here, I just want to remind myself that correction from the 618 down to the 236 is a 40% correction, and all of the past ones have been at minimum 40% corrections. At minimum on a closing basis, and on a wick basis even more so. So significant, I would say. Actually, maybe not as much on a closing basis. On a closing basis, this one over here, actually, yeah, 40%. What about this one over here? I need to know. Like, I absolutely need to know. On a closing basis, no, this one, not bad at all. Actually, like 15% on a closing basis. On a wick basis, 40%, however. And on this one, oh yeah, on this one, it's not going to be anywhere near close on a closing basis. So I guess that would be a little bit of hopium on the other side. So fair enough. Again, I don't have any other comment on that. I'm just looking for a little bit of hopium right there. But I suspect that this chart over here will give the bias as to whether Bitcoin is going to see maybe even 50,000 plus on this, you know, on this next explosive move. As long as Bitcoin is above that pivot, 43,700, that is technically more likely, pending volatility expansion. So it's not there just yet. But damn. You know, it's very interesting to see how these things kind of flip around. We can go check out the HPDR bands over here. And HPDR bands, not actually particularly helpful in this particular instance, just because, you know, Bitcoin is still more or less ranging. It shows range between 45.5 actually, or 45.6 to the upside versus 40,700 to the downside. So I'm not really getting too much from that we don't already know. Bitcoin's in consolidation. Congratulations. And I do think actually this chart over here will probably it will notify things beforehand on this chart. So realistically, what would be an obvious downside signal? Well, there's two. One, Bitcoin coming back down and remaining below this stochastic pivot right here at 43,700, and then especially if Bitcoin just trades below this. What is this, like this last 2-day low here on a closing basis, or if it trades below the low of this last week, that would probably also be good enough as well. And at that point, things can come down quite a fair bit. I mean, this whole year is just, or not this whole year, but 2023 was basically just vertical. So I would start to express, you know, a little bit of caution with that as we do arrive at this major precipice. I think a lot of people are looking at this ETF as maybe even a sell the event type news as well. Fair enough. At the end of the day, what matters most is actual pivots and probabilities as to where that becomes likely for another major move. So I think I'll probably just leave things there. I think that we very likely will get clarity on this situation this week, and dare even say probably early this week, like before Wednesday, I think. I do think it's rather likely. The longer that Bitcoin goes on here sideways, the more and more it will start to be, you know, technically inherently bearish, but that can still take some more time, I suspect. So yeah, I'll be signing off on that note. This video going a little bit longer than what I expected, but that's okay. It's a nice little slow Sunday, and yeah, we'll leave it off right there. With that said, take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.